Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to welcome you this morning. I'm the Reverend Chloe Bride, and I'm the interim minister here at Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church. We gather on this Saturday morning in December to honor and mourn the life of Raymond Ray Lewis Waters. Ray died on Friday, October 20th at the age of 88. He was cremated, and his ashes are being held in the tender care of his family, and they'll be spreading them at sea tomorrow morning. We gather today to celebrate the life of one who has passed. We come together in tears, laughter, silence, to remember and honor our special one. So today I invite you to be present, to listen, and to share. Remember that together we form a community united in our memories of Ray. It is our tradition in the Unitarian Universalist Church to light a chalice at the beginning of our time together. Caitlin and Zane Waters, Ray's grandchildren, will come light our chalice now. Zane's going to do the lighting, and Caitlin's going to do our reading.
We light this chalice with these words. As long as we can love each other and remember the feeling of love we had, we can die without ever really going away. All the love you created is still there. All the memories are still there. You live on in the hearts of everyone you have touched and nurtured while you were here. Death ends a life, not a relationship.
Thank you both for lighting our chalice. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Like many of you, I was saddened by the loss of Ray. I was honored to be his minister for the last year. It was always nice to see him sitting in the first or second row here, right where Carolyn's sitting now, listening attentively to the sermon. He'd usually be sitting with Marvel and with Noel and Carolyn, and they'd all sort of have right there in that front row, so I could look down and see them smiling at me as I was preaching. He was always gentle and kind. Ray died in his home at the age of 88 after having cancer. Although we had known Ray was sick, many were surprised, having had dinner with him or seen him at church only a couple weeks prior. He was an integral part of the PUC, the Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church community. Ray was born on July 29th, 1935, and he was one of 3 brothers. Ray's father died young when he was 14 years old, though his father had been distant from the family for a while, since Ray was about 5 years old. His mother raised 3 boys on her own in Long Beach and Carson, here locally. If you know Ray and his brothers, they all went on to become really accomplished people, perhaps a testament to his mother's strength and dedication. Ray went to Banning High School in Wilmington. It was from there that Ray went to UCLA to study political science. He was a member of Kappa Sigma, or Kappa Sig, as they call it. He was following in his older brother's footsteps. It was at UCLA that Ray met his wife, Marie. They had been building a float for the Rose Parade on New Year's Day. UCLA played in the Rose Bowl twice during Ray's college years, so perhaps it was a celebration of that, why they were building a float, UCLA being in the Rose Bowl. Though I'm sad to say that both of those years, they lost that game. Ray remained until his death a passionate Bruins fan, loving Bruins football and basketball. He had season tickets for many, many years and only gave them up very recently. Ray and Marie married when she graduated college in 1958. At first, Ray thought he would have to go into the military with the draft still active. The U.S. was in the heat of the Cold War at that time. Color blindness and other health issues prevented him from having to do that. Ray drifted around to different jobs and eventually decided to become a teacher. He went back to school to be credentialed in social science and taught in the LA Unified School District. While teaching, he earned his master's degree in economics from USC, and it was during this time that his 2 sons were born, David and Jeff. During his master's, Ray was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to Liberia. They lived in Monrovia for a year. At the time, David was 3 years old and Jeff was 5. Though David doesn't really remember those times in Liberia, he has seen all the pictures. Their travels were at least well documented. Marie, for all of her career, was a reference librarian at UCLA, eventually going on to head the department. The family was very involved with UCLA library events. Ray and Marie bought a home in Hermosa Beach in 1967. This was the same house Ray lived in until his death. They were social people with friends in various groups around LA. In addition to Ray's love of Bruin sports, they adored the theater and were season ticket holders of the Mark Taper Forum from its opening in 1967. Ray may have gone on to do a PhD, but he didn't want to leave the LA area. He knew his wife's career was at UCLA and respected her career enough not to uproot the family. Carolyn said he always admired the accomplishments of women, perhaps because of his mother. Ray's mom was a real estate broker and owned a Century 21 office. When David was in middle school, Ray left teaching to pursue a career in his mom's real estate office. He eventually found out that he was not a good salesperson. He was a little too honest and a little too realistic. He was the type who would tell a client, "No, I really don't think that's the right house for you." And it's not exactly how you sell houses to people. He eventually went back to teaching, pivoting to work in special education until the end of his career. Realistic kindness works a lot better when you're helping people learn. The nice thing about Ray's career was it let him spend quality time with his family. He was there for his 2 boys and wife. This commitment extended to his grandchildren later in life. Although quiet, he always showed up to the dance performances and the graduations. He was the type of father and grandfather you could count on. In addition to his deep commitment to his family, Ray was a big reader. He read the LA Times and the New York Times every morning, and he and Marie were sort of those Sunday morning paper people. They would sit for hours on end with the paper and hot beverages, educating themselves about world events. He also had a huge collection of presidential biographies and loved reading nonfiction, mysteries, and spy novels. In 2001, the couple retired. He had been a teacher for 24 years and in real estate for 10. In 2003, they bought a car and started a cross-country road trip. They were quite happy being retired. It was near the end of that trip that Ray's beloved Marie died of a stroke. It was sad to think that they were just beginning to enjoy their retirement when tragedy struck. In addition to his love of reading, Ray became active in the Democratic Party when he retired. I very much see it as Ray returning to his political science roots, that degree he got so early in college. A love nurtured in college and through years of teaching social science to students. He finally had time in retirement to get involved in elections and local issues. And you probably, as you were coming in, saw a certificate from LA County recognizing his involvement. In 2003, Ray met Carolyn here at church. A friend of Ray's, Lori Geitman, who's with us today, brought Ray to church. In their first conversation, Ray asked Carolyn about politics. She identified herself as a member of the Green Party. Ray's reply, "I find those people strident." In the weeks following, he made a point of talking to her at church. Finally, they went to dinner and were officially dating by mid 2004. Ray was persistent and certain that Carolyn was a good match for him. She remembers him showing up at her office with a leather-bound calendar book, saying that he just wanted to give her a very useful gift to stay organized. On December 30th, 2006, they were married here at PUC. Ray was never jealous or controlling. The relationship was always comfortable. They were together for 17 years. Ray is survived by his sons and 5 grandchildren: Robin, Caitlin, Lily, Zane, and Jennifer. He will be remembered as a quiet, kind man with a big heart who valued family, learning, equity, and UCLA sports. He dreamed of a better world and worked hard through teaching and politics to make it happen. Ray will be missed. In the Jewish tradition, they say, "May his memory be a blessing." I like this phrase a lot. May those who are still living recall Ray with warmth and joy. May the life he lived continue to touch us and remind us of what matters in the world: family, love, equity, and kindness. May his memory be a blessing always. If you would join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, under the vast spiral of time and space, surrounded by the simple blessings of a community of care and love, we carry memories of Ray with us. Spirit, grant us strength, wisdom, and gratitude. Give us strength to speak of our lives so that in each day yet to come, we find more compassion, more understanding, more of the loving kindness that fills our world with joy and laughter. Give us courage to cherish one another so that we use our lives to heal instead of hurt and lead ourselves to the possibility of forgiveness instead of defiance. And we give thanks for Ray. His memory lives on in the great spirit of life that surrounds us, and his memory, cherished by us, dwells deeply through us by the person he was and still is in our hearts. We have celebrated the cycles of life in which we find ourselves, celebrating life at its beginning and its end, both always present among us. Spirit of life and love, remind us to love life as fully as we are able to. Remind us to treasure our friends and family as they treasured their friends and family. And even though we must bid them farewell, the gift of their life is a treasure that cannot be ungiven. We celebrate the life Ray lived among us. And now his soul is at rest. And we miss him very much. It's in that spirit that we take a moment of silence in honor of Ray. May it be so. Amen.
Gather by the river, where bright angels' feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the strains by the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach the shining river. Soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God, that flows by the throne of God.
Now is the time when we'll hear reflections from some of Ray's family and friends. David?
I want to thank all of you for coming here today to celebrate my father's life. Whether you came a long way to be here or you live close by, it's very meaningful. My father would have been honored. It's been 8 weeks since my father passed, and I spent a lot of time thinking about what I should say to memorialize my father. It turns out to be a lot harder than I thought to share in just a few minutes what my father meant to me, but I'll give it a try. I learned a great many things from my father, but mostly I think he taught me through words, actions, and example what it means to be a decent human being. Personally, I'm still working on becoming that person, but I know that the lessons my father taught me will stay with me for the rest of my life. My father was, after all, a teacher. Since before I was born, He taught history and social studies to middle and high school students, and when my brother and I were young, Dad had a fair amount of time to spend with us when he wasn't working. In particular, because he had long summer vacations just as we did, we traveled every summer all over the western United States, riding in our red Volkswagen camper van. Some of you will remember that. There's a picture of my dad with that camper van out on the board at the entrance. We drove as far as Montana and Wyoming in that camper van, visiting Yellowstone Park and seeing the Old Faithful geyser erupt. Camping with my father produced some of my best memories. Sometimes we all slept in the camper van. Other times my brother and I slept in a tent while my parents stayed in the camper. My mother got cold easily, and the camper was a bit warmer than the tent, so he would sacrifice to help her stay warm. This way, we experienced the beauty of national parks and camping sites all along California and the western U.S. I remember gathering firewood and my father teaching me how to hold first a hatchet and later an axe, and how not to chop off my fingers or any other appendages with an errant swing. Just as many parents struggle today to get their kids out of the house, my parents always encouraged us to do outdoor activities, even as the draw of TV and the early video games competed to pull us back indoors. Our local Boy Scout troop was quite focused on outdoor activities such as hiking and camping. When I was 11, my dad made me sign up for the Scouts, but I didn't really enjoy it initially. I was small for my age, and I felt intimidated by the other boys, most of whom were much bigger than me. When I told him that I wanted to quit, he responded that he would let me quit, provided I gave it a shot, at least for a few months. Sure enough, after spending the summer hiking, camping, and shooting off the model rockets that we made in the Scouts, I was hooked, just as my dad had expected. As older Scouts, every summer we spent 1 week in the Sierras on our long-term trip, sleeping in tents with no showers, no phones, no electricity, or any devices. My dad joined us on those hiking trips when he could, and I can't help thinking that it was a better time. As we all know, teaching doesn't pay all that well, and so after working as a teacher for 17 years, in part of the encouragement of his mother, my grandmother, my father took over my grandmother's real estate business in Carson. As the real estate broker in the Carson Century 21 office, he managed the office and the various real estate agents, in addition to acting as a real estate agent himself. I remember feeling pride that my father managed all of these people, but I later learned that he was earning less than some of his agents, who were all paid on commission. Sales was not my father's strength. I think it went against his instincts. As I had told Minister Chloe, I clearly remember him telling us how he talked a couple out of buying a house that they were prepared to buy because he thought it wasn't right for them. The economy was tough then. It was a difficult time to be a real estate broker. I remember many times when my father worked tirelessly for days or weeks to help a family find and buy a house, only for the deal to fall through at the last minute because the buyer had poor credit or financing simply fell through. I'm sure it was tough on him, being the main breadwinner of the household, but he never showed any stress. He was always calm. After several years struggling in the real estate business, my father finally decided to shut down my grandmother's office and return to teaching, where at least he had a guaranteed income. For his second venture at teaching, my father got into special education. Teaching special ed has got to be among the most demanding of teaching jobs. Just getting the kids to focus for 10 minutes was often a challenge. My father had to deal with kids who had been passed on to the special ed just because they were troublemakers in school, and none of the other teachers wanted to deal with them. Regardless, my father always dealt with his students with a calm demeanor, never getting frustrated or upset. And his students loved him. My father was always the calming force in our household, and I suspect that he had that effect on others as well, including many of you here today. I believe that my father lived a good and decent life, leaving a positive impact on most of the people with whom he crossed paths. I'm very proud of him and miss him very much today. Thank you.
I have a remembrance from my cousin, Tony, who wanted to say something about my dad. And this is the story that he wanted to share with you. This is a really old story about my Uncle Ray, he writes. In 1962 or so, I lived in Inyo County, where there were cowboys, horses, and guns. As a 5-year-old, I liked guns. So I asked my dad to take me shooting. He told us we didn't have a gun. I wanted to know why not. My dad said they were dangerous. Did Uncle Bob have a gun? He'd been a soldier, after all. No, Uncle Bob did not have a gun. Did Uncle Ray have a gun? Well, yes, my dad said. I think he does. Uncle Ray was suddenly a really cool uncle, in my eyes. Somehow the message got to Uncle Ray that I wanted to shoot his gun. He and Aunt Marie came up sometime later, and when I saw him, I asked about his gun. He said, well, yes, the gun was in the trunk of the car, and we could go shooting later. You see, uncles are cooler than dads. We went out to the desert and did indeed shoot Uncle Ray's .22 rifle. I remember shooting a piece of wood. Uncle Ray took one of the pieces of wood and showed me the hole the bullet made and said, feel how hard that wood is? Now, feel your stomach. Now imagine how much damage that bullet would do to your soft stomach. I do not remember many conversations from over 60 years ago, but somehow that one made an impression. Anyway, fast forward 40 years or so, and we're at a family reunion somewhere. I got talking to Uncle Ray and asked about his gun. He said, what gun? He claimed not to know about a gun. Oh, yeah, that gun. How did you know about that? He asked. I told him at the time I told him of the time he was cultivating my gun fetish. He added, it's disassembled out in the garage. I told him the story of him taking me shooting when I was 5, but he did not remember the incident and was, I think, a bit embarrassed. Jeff or David were there too and said, what gun, Dad? Did you have a gun? He sheepishly admitted that he did. Why didn't you take us shooting too? Why only Tony? To which Uncle Ray turned into dad mode and said something like, do you think I would do something stupid as that? Then he related a story about when he must have been about 10 years old and pulled the trigger on a gun that his older brother had told him wasn't loaded. The bullet whizzed past the head of his friend and put a hole in the wall. He got in trouble from his mom, our grandmother. Like me, he had a lifetime memory of guns. Mine is of an uncle who was cooler than my dad. His was of almost killing his friend and getting in trouble from his mom. Anyway, Uncle Ray then asked me if I wanted the gun. I told him no. My fascination with guns passed long ago. I asked him a couple years about the gun, and he said that it was still out in the garage, disassembled. I do remember that gun. It was a bolt-action .22 rifle, and he didn't like shooting it, but he wasn't going to let it go because it was part of his family, belonged in his family. Thank you.
The minister stole all my thunder, so I'll do the best I can. Ray was a Democrat, but something you may not know is that Ray was a Democrat. And we've learned today that Ray was a real estate broker. And some have said not a very good one. Well, he hoodwinked Amy and I, and we bought a house that he had for sale. We had to twist his arm. It was across the street from his and Marie's. And it's kind of a funny story. We're driving around on Sunday looking at property in the South Bay. This is in 1990. And we were getting towards the end of the day. It's like 5 o'clock. We see an open house sign at 24th Place. So we make a hard left off of Ardmore, go up the street, park in front of a house that had a sign on it, and the broker is taking the open house sign down and walking it across the street. And we said, "Excuse me, is this the house that you have for sale?" "Yes, but I'm closing up for the day." Always the hard sell, Ray. So if you haven't met the lovely Amy Rockefeller over there, say hi, Amy. She doesn't take no very well. It's kind of a don't tell me no kind of thing. And she convinced Ray, "Well, just let us look at the house. I mean, I know you're closing down for the day, but just let us walk through it." So we walked through it. I'm an architect. I'm a challenge for any broker, anywhere, to this day. I walk through the house and I go, "Ray, this house has really good bones." "Yeah." But Flag is a tough customer. Flag was the guy that owned it. Kind of a hothead, pickup truck kind of guy. So Ray did his best to talk us out of it, but darn it, we wrote up a purchase agreement right then and there, because Amy takes no prisoners. So we convinced them that we're going to buy the house. And, kind of the next thing, we own it. And we're across the street from Ray and Marie, looking at their house, which was a nightmare. You guys remember that. So the house that the Waters family grew up in, and the boys stumbled around and had 6 different floor levels on the first floor, I think. You walked upstairs and then walked up other stairs, and you couldn't get to certain rooms without going through a different stair. And Marie kind of knowingly winked at me and said, "We probably need to think about our house at some point." Ray's like, no. I'm a real estate agent. I have no money. So that started out our long and wonderful ride through remodeling their house. I think it was probably a 2-year journey, and Ray showed great patience with Marie, and we got everything that Marie and I wanted. I don't know if Ray got anything he wanted. It was a wonderful experience for me and for Marie, and I hope for the boys. I don't know if you guys remember that. But Ray was always very calm, very patient, and we got through it somehow with a lot of raised eyebrows. But I've completed many projects in homes, hundreds. And I got to say that house, as I walk out the door every day and look at it, it's still one of my favorites. And in fact, because of the relationship, it was my favorite. And because of Ray taught me a lot. That little sly smile of his, you know it, could kind of correct you without saying anything. Politically, I was a novice. I'm an architect, for crying out loud. Of course I'm a Democrat. Ray would go like, "Well, what do you really mean by that?" And we'd have long discussions. He was very supportive of every cause that was worthy. He was very supportive of Amy and I. And he always kind of led us down the lead by example kind of road. You can't have a better friend than that. Ray was always a good friend, was always a good advisor. He was a quiet leader. He will be missed by Amy and I, and I'm sure by all of you. Thanks.
Older than dirt. That's a hat I found that I thought was appropriate for Ray that I brought to a birthday party. That was 20 years ago. The next year on my birthday, hat showed up at my house. That continued year after year over many years. I think I finally reached the age where it's appropriate for me, as I thought it was for Ray 20 years ago. The better title for Ray really was Energizer Bunny, because as you've heard from family members and friends, that's what he was all of his life. Actually, a week and a half before we lost him, at the very first in-person meeting of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party since before COVID, there was Ray and Carolyn, serving in his role as an elected representative for all of us living in the 66th Assembly District, where he had served as a representative going back to the 53rd Assembly District for all of these years that we've been talking about Ray. I'm going to read now from something I posted to my newsletter the week after I heard about Ray's passing, and I also read from it at the Hermosa Beach City Council meeting, so that the community would know. Much of this you've already heard from others, but I'll just say a beloved father, grandfather, and husband, Ray passed unexpectedly from health complications at his Hermosa Beach home on Friday, October 20th. 88 years of age, South Bay native. I love this. Born in the then unincorporated area of Los Angeles that is now Carson. He spent his life, a good part of it, as a teacher in the Los Angeles Unified School District, specializing in special needs students. And in his retirement, he served one term as an elected member of the Hermosa Beach City School District Board of Education. And I'm going to reflect on that a bit, because when he saw the list of people who'd pulled their papers to run for school board, he didn't feel there was a good enough candidate. So only for that reason did he step up and run, and he won. Moira and I, my wife Moira and I, came to know Ray about 20 years ago, and got to know him as a tireless supporter of the Democratic Party, its candidates, and our community. We became fast friends. He served as president of the Beach Cities Democrats, and as I said, represented our Assembly District, Los Angeles County Democratic Party, and as a delegate to the California State Democratic Party. Also, I was active in Beach Cities Democrats, and that's probably where I first met Ray. But I wasn't as involved in Los Angeles County Democratic Party, where Ray really was. And in 2009, he nominated me and championed me, even amongst folks at the county party who didn't really know me, to be that year's Democrat of the Year. I was surprised and flattered, but that was Ray, kind of paying attention to the people he felt deserved things, and he felt that that was me then. But it wouldn't have happened without Ray. And I'm wearing that pin now, as I have now every day since hearing the news of Ray's passing. Getting back to the things I had said to folks in my newsletter, Ray and his wife Carolyn could always be counted on to support Democratic Party efforts, regularly opened up their home to host political events. And for me, for many years, I could always count on Ray. He was the keeper of all things Beach Cities Democrats, the banners, the paraphernalia, the table, the chairs. I could count on him to set up and table for Beach Cities Democrats first thing in the morning, all 3 days of the Memorial Day and Labor Day Fiesta Hermosa weekends, as well as Manhattan Beach Hometown Fair each October. Ray was always there, always willing to be there up early in the morning and to spend sometimes all day, all 3 days with me and others. But Ray was the one, always there. Energizer Bunny. You could also count on Ray setting up and volunteering at the Beach Cities Democrats table that we used to have at the Hermosa Beach Farmers Market at the corner of 11th and Valley whenever we had a local election coming up. I loved those Friday afternoons with Ray. We'd sit there all afternoon and spell each other once in a while to go over and get a taco or something from the farmer's market and come back. But I was never there alone. It was always with Ray. I'll add some other things that I hadn't put in the newsletter and the announcements. He was a dedicated environmentalist, which is something that we bonded with. Rooftop solar very early on in his Hermosa Beach home, the beautiful Hermosa Beach home. He bought an early buyer of a 2011 Nissan Leaf. Do you still have it, Carolyn? I think you still do. No, it had its life, but it was yes, but an early adopter dedicated to it, and by God, Ray was going to have one. Edible garden. They have an edible garden. Again, it's consistent with Ray saw an opportunity to do something good. Ray and Carolyn did it. Chickens. Ray's chickens. You get the most beautiful, gorgeous eggs from Ray and Carolyn's chickens. And I concluded my comments to that newsletter, and then I'm going to read some things that other folks had sent. In everything he did, Ray gave freely of his time with a ready smile and positive attitude that displayed the truly kind-natured person we will all very much miss. On the 20th, Carolyn made a call to Moira and me to let us know about Ray's passing, and she wanted me to make sure as many of his friends knew about it. So I looked at my contacts and I texted as many folks as I could. And you can imagine the immediate replies I got from so many, and I will read some of them here. Current Hermosa Beach Mayor Justin Massey just said, Ray will be missed. And he said, please convey my condolences to Carol. From current school board member, and she's, I think, about ready to serve in her 3rd term, Maggie Beauvais-LaMonica, she said, I got on school board because of Ray, and Ray's support and encouragement. From former Hermosa Beach City Council member Stacey Armato, thank you for letting us know, Dency. Ray will be missed immensely. Assemblyman Al Maritsucci, who is here with us, he said, so sad. I will miss him. What a loss. From Senator Ben Allen, and I know there's representatives from Senator Allen who are here, I'm so sad to hear this news. From former council member and mayor of Hermosa Beach, Jeff Duclos, who's now living in San Diego, and I believe he's streaming this. He was one of the nicest, warmest, kindest men I've ever known. He will always live on in our hearts. Our deepest condolences to Carol from me and Christine. And then finally, in this thread, there was many, many, many others, but from Congressman Ted Lieu, so sorry to hear this sad news. Condolences to Carol and his family. It was an honor to have known Ray. May he rest in peace. And then the only thing I will is last night I got many, many texts from people who were sorry that they couldn't be here. I'll just mention a couple of them because I know that I think all of them are streaming this event. I hope I brought them here and included them. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. This is from a former Beach Cities Democrat president, Lee Fink, who now is back living in Tustin, where he grew up. But he was living in Redondo Beach for a very long time, and was the president, very active in Beach Cities Democrats. He would be here, but he was exposed to COVID. He didn't test, but he didn't want to risk being here and perhaps exposing others. So I'm sure he's watching right now. But among his comments, he said, Ray consistently showed up to help me when I ran for Redondo Beach City Council in 2005. And I only regret that I could not help him more when he ran for school board in Hermosa Beach while I was in DC. And he put in parentheses, though it turns out he didn't need my help. And what I'll tell you, what Lee was doing for 8 years in Washington, D.C., he was working for the Obama administration. In 2009, when he would have been here helping out Ray with his campaign, he was the White House liaison from President Obama to NASA. And then in President Obama's second term, Lee was the liaison to the Department of Agriculture. So there's a long list of prestigious Democrats who were influenced by and supported by Ray. But I'll end with this because before I end with this last paragraph that Lee sent, former Beach Cities Democrats President Bobby Busher, she sent me a text last night. She was heartbroken. She's had some health issues and was not able to attend, but I know she's streaming. Bobby was a dear, dear friend of all of us, and I know she came to visit you, Carol, so that was at least she had the opportunity to spend some time with you, and as I say, she's watching now. But Lee finished his email, and he wanted to make sure that Carol knew this, because you were there at Lee's wedding. So after having said the things that how helpful Ray had been for him and his campaign and the other things, Lee finished up by saying, "My best memory of Ray is recent. It was at my wedding. As the ceremony was starting and I came down the aisle, I remember Ray sort of happily, unexpectedly calling out my name, 'It's Lee.' So I came down the aisle to start things off. It's hard to describe, but it was just the sort of happy utterance that you hope to have at a wedding, and I think of that often." That was Ray, always out there with joy and with generosity. And Ray, I promise I'll do my best to keep on getting into that good trouble that the late Congressman Lewis always said, because we did a lot of good trouble together, and I'm going to do my best to be the Energizer Bunny that you were.
Now is a time for sharing of community memories. So I'm going to walk around with the microphone, and if you'd like to share a brief memory about Ray, you're welcome to raise your hand, and I'll bring the mic to you, and you can stand at your seat so we can all see you. So I'll start on this side and sort of work my way around. If you'll just give me a wave.
I'm Penny Tronell, one of Ray's friends. I recall one of my very best memories of Ray was his work, his contribution with the permaculture garden, which he had a major influence on. We were both members of the Green Sanctuary Committee, in which he was one of the good leaders. And I remember how we worked together. He was an environmentalist, as has been said, and we worked together consistently with the permaculture garden. It was one of his best contributions to the church and the community.
I had the pleasure of serving on the facilities committee with Ray for several years before the pandemic hit, and he was a special guy. He was a lot of fun, and he was able to extract me and another member, Noel, out of the rabbit hole that we often fall into discussing the things that we need to do for facilities. So I just think he's a really special guy, and it was a pleasure for me to know him.
My name is April, and we moved to Manhattan Beach in 1994. And sometime after that, I started the first big peace event I'd ever done in my house, where people came to make signs and to create a march in Manhattan Beach against us going into the war, in what became the War Forever War. And Ray showed up with this bright light, and I was very insecure. I had never done anything like that. So encouraging, was hammering away at signs and painting things, and then he said, "Are we gonna do it again?" Right? So it helped me establish, I just felt of him as an anchor in this community. His light shone so brightly.
I'm Robin Patterson from this church, and a few years ago, Ray called me and he said, "I want to give Carolyn piano lessons for her Christmas present." And so she's been my dear friend and student for quite a few years, and we have a wonderful time together.
Ray was my neighbor, and we moved here in 2016. He was really funny. He would make jokes of my brother, Oliver, when he was trying to get a chicken. And I would make drawings, a lot of them. I was 4 years old when I moved here. Me and Ray and Carol became friends, and I just started making pictures. I loved to draw. And then Oliver always went over to the house, and then Ray was like, and then he would just ding dong, and then Ray would say, "Who's there?" And then my brother was like, "Can I pet a chicken?" And Henrietta would never let Oliver pet her.
Hi, I'm Lori Geitman, and Ray always figured big in my life from the time we met at Beach City's Democrats. And when he told me that he was lonely after Marie died, I said, "Why don't you come up to PUC? Your brother's a Unitarian. You would like it." So he came up here, and we had coffee hour after church, and I saw this lovely Carol standing there. And I said to Ray, "Come meet Carol." So that's sort of how that happened. But the funny thing that happened with Ray and I was Ray and his first electric car. We drove in his electric car. We carpooled to the valley. And as we were coming back, there was some concern the electricity might run out. And we would have to call Carol to come and get us, and AAA to tow the car. Well, we got to the top of Mulholland. We made it there, and when the car came down Mulholland, it picked up energy. And we were able to make it back to Hermosa Beach.
I want to start by giving my deepest condolences to Carol and Ray's family. I've only had the privilege of knowing Ray for about the last 12 years. But I know that, for those of you that are not political, you hear a lot about what a great Democrat Ray was. And I want to say, like a lot of people nowadays, when they think about politics, they think about all the partisan divides and, Democrats versus Republicans. But, Ray really personified, how for all of us Beach City, South Bay Democrats, it's more than just a party. It's a community. And Ray was really the heart and soul of the Beach City's Democrats community. I mean, like Dempsey said, any activity that we were doing, you can always count on Ray to be there, And he was always opening up, their beautiful home with Carol, to host so many of the holiday parties and the campaign events. And it wasn't just a bunch of party hacks that just got together. It was, it's a real community that Ray was really the heart and soul of. And I just wanted people to appreciate, how much we are going to miss Ray as such a pillar of our local community.
So most of my memories of Ray are from when I was a kid. I grew up with David and Jeff, was over at their house fairly frequently. And, as a kid, you have lots of different kinds of adults in your life. Exciting ones, flashy ones, ones that kind of look right through you. And the thing I remember about Ray is that he always created he had this feeling that you mattered, that you were in a friendly, safe space where you could just play and be free. And as a child, that is just such a wonderful gift to be given by an adult. And so that was really wonderful, and I thought I'd share that.
Hi, I'm Nancy from this church, and we got close with Ray and Carolyn when John here was doing his Eagle project in the garden. And, everybody's already said everything that is so true of what a kind presence he was. And just one personal thing, we were doing a cleanup at the garden, which is always a work in progress. And I was trimming some plants, trying to clear the pathway, the trail, which are some steps that go up. And, struggling a little bit. And Ray came up next to me with some big shears and just chop, chop, chop. And just having him next to me, just his joy permeated, and it just made it light work and fun.
My name's Nina, and I'm Carolyn's niece. And you mentioned what a wonderful father and grandfather Ray was to his grandchildren, and just wanted to note how lucky Carolyn's family feels too, that they found each other, and he was so welcoming to our family, and loved hearing about the history of his and Marie's lovely home, because it's become a very special place for our family as well. So we will miss him very much.
I am Ted Waters. I'm David and Jeff's older, I was told yesterday, much older cousin, in fact. But this brings back tremendous memories, and I was really kind of surprised today to learn that your father went to USC for grad school. Because my memory really was of the deep divide in our family from day one. My father and Uncle Ray both went to UCLA and were Kappa Sigs. My mother went to UCLA. Anne-Marie went to UCLA. David went to UCLA. But our Uncle Jim, and where's Danny? Danny's side of the black sheep of the family, went to USC. And our entire youth, and we had tickets to both USC and UCLA basketball and football, and it was a bloodbath, the whole thing. So that's what I remember, not all the changing the world stuff, but USC, UCLA. So there we go.
Our hymn today is Amazing Grace. You're invited to stand as you're willing and able to sing with us. The words are on the back of your program.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than we when we he'd first begun.
You may be seated. Before I say our closing words today, I want to thank my helpers in this service, Severin Bennon on the piano, Abraham Cervantes, our singer today. Thank you, Abraham, and Kelly Kinsman in the back on AB. As we move forward today, we don't know what ultimately lies ahead. We know only this, that destiny carries us onward towards some great mystery, and that the life we share is fleeting. Reminded of life's transcendence, may we be inspired to use each day wisely and to live with the curiosity, dedication, and kindness that Ray did. Thus, we make the memory of Ray a source of true blessing. In remembrance of Ray today, we say together, Amen. Amen.